members of University of Peshawar UOP, Balochistan University of Information Technology, Engineering and Management Sciences, and Center of Excellence on Population and Wellbeing Studies, NUST. I would also like to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Irfan Ali Khan, Director General, PDMA, Dr. Abid Qayyum Soleri, Executive Director, SDPI, and speakers from the Urban Unit. A special thanks to our respected Sir Jonathan Addleton, Rector, FCCU, Associate Vice Rector, Dr. Sufyan Aslam, Dr. Sikandar Hayat, Dean Social Sciences. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants who are joining us via Zoom and in persons, including the FCCU community. Before commencing our opening session, I would like to invite Mr. Ahmed Hassan for the recitation of Holy Quran and Ms. Shagufa Yunus for the recitation of Holy Bible.
Bismillah. لم يلد ولم يكن له صدق the word of God, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. God is faithful and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. Amen.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shagufa and Mr. Ahmed. Now, I would like to invite our respected Dr. Jonathan Addleton, Rector, FCCU. Dr. Addleton was born and raised in Pakistan. He's a graduate of Murray Christian School, has a PhD in International Relations from Tufts University, and BSc in Journalism from Northwestern University. A five-time USAID mission director, he also served as U.S. Ambassador to Mongolia and USAID representative to the European Union. As USAID Mission Director in Islamabad during 2006 to 2007, he headed the USAID-funded reconstruction effort in northern Pakistan following the devastating earthquake there in October 2005. Prior to joining the U.S. Foreign Service in March 1984, he also worked for the Macon Telegraph, World Bank, and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Dr. Addleton, please join us on stage for the welcome remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukriya. Thank you very much, and welcome, Khush Amdeed. It's great to be here on this subject. I was glad to see actually my comments are brief because I think that the substance of this lies ahead, but it is an honor to welcome our guests of honor, to welcome our faculty, to welcome our students on this important topic. There was just 4 or 5 things I wanted to quickly say, and I guess that will help launch it as well. There's some events I come to that I feel I come with a certain amount of experience and knowledge. I think this is one that I really do come to learn, and I think I mean they say that learning goes on forever, and it certainly does. But this is a big topic, and it's a lot of things in my own learning that I can improve on. And so again, I look forward to that aspect. For me, this will be a learning experience, as I think it will be for people here. A couple things I like about it: certainly The partnership aspect, I was going to say 5 partners. I see the Kingdom of Netherlands is there as well. So thank you for that as well. But anytime you can have an event with half a dozen partners like this, other universities, other international organizations, and other institutions, I think it's fantastic, because I think that brings people together in all kinds of different ways and amplifies the impact. Another thing I like about this is the data-driven part about it. This is when I say I'm here to learn, because I think, when I talk about some of these subjects, climate change, megacities, flooding, urban flooding, I tend to descend into the anecdotes. And I think anecdotes and I think stories are important. I think they illustrate a point. I think they get across important points. But I think it's more compelling if the stories are also backed up by some data too. And so I think that's great that it comes in under the rubric data driven. Of course, the urban flooding aspect is also there, and this is where I just want to say a couple of things. For us in this location, and for our students, our 9,000 students and our faculty for that matter and staff that come from all over Pakistan, flooding is not a theoretical issue. It's something that they've experienced, if not urban flooding, that great flood of a couple of years ago, which was so devastating to Pakistan. But if you just think of the urban flooding aspect, and this even goes back hardly a couple of weeks. I feel like I let somebody down in this case, but we got a cry for help, I guess, from one of my contacts in the neighborhood, someone that our family knows. And she said, my father's in that basement and the basement's getting flooded. What do I do? And of course I was sort of saying, well, we're trying to dig ourselves out of our flood as well. And, I couldn't immediately deploy a pump to take care of it. I think that they made some phone calls and I think that was helpful. But again, this is a real live issue for all of us here. And of course, anybody that's Zahur Alahi Gate, that road out there when the waters come. And of course, we also very much appreciated a conversation I had this week with WASA, because WASA had some thoughts about this, and we very much appreciate that what WASA's represented here too, because I think this is something that cuts across a lot of organizations, provincial, national, private, NGOs, international organizations. The WASA was interesting because they were talking about the potential of underground reservoirs. I think apparently Gaddafi Stadium, which is right next door, is another of those places that are flooded. And so, again, this idea of it's a very technical issue, and again, sometimes out of my depth on the technical aspects. But the reality is, it's a big issue for Pakistan. It's a big issue for the world, and there's also a lot of technical aspects and policy aspects, which is part of the discussion here again as well. So I'm really glad that we can convene these into our campus. And, again, just thinking of all the ramifications, I mentioned that neighborhood, that very personal story about somebody whose basement was flooding and their elderly father. What are they going to do about it? But then you go on to the knock-on effects. One of the big ones around here, of course, is dengue fever. That flooding takes place and you have the immediate relief from flooding. But what about the effects afterwards? And in this case, dengue fever is something that is a recurring issue every year. I guess the other thing to mention in terms of partnerships, another of those partnerships that we've also developed is with the World Wildlife, WWF. We do have a small recharge well that's part of it. And I think, from our perspective, we like to contribute in different kinds of ways, certainly including holding an event like this. So again, Khush Amdeed, welcome to everybody's here. As I mentioned, this is a learning time for me, so I guess I'll start my learning when I sit down. And so again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adelton, for honoring us with your amazing remarks. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Tanya Durrani. Ms. Tanya Durrani is a development professional, humanitarian, response gender-based violence, GBV, technical specialist, the UNFPA. Ms. Tanya, please join us for your remarks. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, colleagues. Thank you. Yes, Tanya Durrani, and I'm overseeing the Punjab program here for UNFPA based in Lahore. I wanted to start by thanking and appreciating Rector Adelton, for your comments, Dean, FCCU, and the faculty, respected partners, SDPI, our implementing partner, key stakeholders, DG Sub, PDMA, and EPD, and others. I wanted to start by speaking a little bit about UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund. So basically, we are a leading agency globally in the area of population development, reproductive health, family planning. We work on rights issues, gender-based violence, and also in the space of humanitarian response. The vision of UNFPA is really to accelerate 3 transformative results to reduce preventable maternal deaths, ending unmet need for family planning, which is currently about 17%. So what that means is that the population is keen to use family planning, but doesn't always have access to it. Also, of course, to ending gender-based violence and harmful practices, which includes child marriage. These are really ambitious targets, and through our country program and strategic policy, we aim to address all of this both globally and in Pakistan. So UNFPA is focusing on reaching out to the most vulnerable groups, women, girls, persons with disability, young people, to ensure that no one is left behind. We do this, we have 3 different approaches. I'll start by explaining, we work in the space of advocacy and policy dialogue on legislation and really sort of implementing different laws that exist, both at federal and then in the respective provinces. So for instance, relating to laws on domestic violence, child marriage, and others. And then we're supporting policy formulation. We do a lot of institutional strengthening, so training, capacity building, working with our stakeholders, many line departments here, PWD, social welfare, criminal justice sector, and of course, Department of Health. And one of the crux areas of work is evidence generation, research. UNFPA supports the government with the PDHS. PDHS was last conducted in 2017, and for various reasons, COVID and whatnot, it hasn't been conducted again, but now we'll be supporting them with that exercise as well, which includes data collection and analysis. So UNFPA is working in full partnership, like I said, with the national, provincial governments, academia, research institutions, and of course with other international development partners. And we've been in Pakistan for 50 years. So a little bit of background just for today. We have been supporting our partner, our implementing partner, SDPI, with this initiative called Data for Development. And it is sort of a first of its kind in Pakistan, where we're really trying to emphasize the importance of data as a main cornerstone for sort of policy and development, program development. One of the main components is dialogues. This today is a third of a series of dialogues. We've had one in Islamabad, which was the launch very recently, a few months ago. And then more recently, we had one in Quetta as well. Both were really well attended, and this is the third in Lahore. The primary objective has really been to build the capacity of our PRCs, population research centers, working with universities, partnering, of course, FCC, NUST, IBA. These are established PRCs by UNFPA, and really to go beyond, working with universities, but to go beyond with the academic research to help use that research, that data, to sort of really influence programs and policy. And to sort of using multi-sectoral engagement as well. The central theme of the program has really been to highlight the importance of data and how it can really influence policy. And so, for example, recently in Quetta, the theme in Quetta was to sort of look at the needs and challenges that youth are facing in these settings. And of course, we have very less data on the situations specifically pertaining to youth, or for example, persons with disability. And really having that data, or not having that data rather, can pose a lot of challenges, especially when you're sort of trying to address their needs. Speaking a little bit more about today. As we know, Pakistan is one of the most affected countries. Rector has mentioned that as well, especially when it comes to climate change. And basically the climate catastrophes in Pakistan, and if I speak more about Punjab, really has an adverse effect on vulnerable groups, so women and girls. And it really is exacerbating the public health concerns here, has implications on energy, reducing access to food and rights, and especially services. According to Pakistan's National Disaster Management Authority, the recent floods have affected 33 million people and has destroyed or damaged more than 2.1 million homes. This is prevalent in Punjab's urban cities. If we look at Lahore, Multan, Faisalabad, Pindi, and many others, where you have high concentrations of population, of course, when you have flooding and climate disasters, you're really unfortunately affecting a lot more people. In Punjab's case, we've seen an increase or a burst of population. We are at, over the last 6 years, from 110 million to 127 million. And now 5 million more Punjabis have been added to what is projected on current demographic trends. I just want to highlight that when climate change happens, so whether it's rainfall or floods, women and young girls, persons with disability, are disproportionately and more severely affected as they are very vulnerable. Rector has mentioned using those anecdotal points. I just wanted to mention in the recent floods, actually I was in Sindh and I had some interactions with the community, and a story was shared with me that basically a lot of women and young girls were not able to leave their homes or swim away because of, first of all, the clothing that they were wearing, which isn't conducive to be able to swim and get through the waters in those instances, and also because of, them not really being permitted to leave the home without a male figure. And of course, you can imagine many women and mothers really just stayed home and stayed put and were adversely affected. And that's why you see a lot more loss of life for women and young people and girls. There's lots of other examples like that one can really quote. But as was said earlier, I think really grounding our policies in data is really, really key. And that is vital for improving preparedness, contingency planning, and really sort of making sure that those key groups are and their needs and access to services in these situations are sort of going to be addressed. I would add that having gender disaggregated data is really important as well. I think it's really crucial to examine the current data landscape and culture and understand how data is being harnessed, emphasizing that data-driven planning is the key. And it's very important to bring key relevant sectors together, key line departments and partners on sort of a unified platform when you're thinking about policy and when you're sort of doing preparedness planning. Having that access to reproductive health services really enhances resilience and empowers women and girls to fully sort of be engaged in also their system in the planning phases as well. And that's really key to sort of ensure their safety, and that's really to safeguard their safety. Just in closing, I'd like to say that for UNFPA, these kinds of relationships, partnerships with universities is really, really important. And I'd like to extend on behalf of UNFPA in Punjab, our technical support in addressing these critical issues. And we recognize that climate change and urbanization are not just environmental challenges, but also, they have profound impacts on human rights of our population, and of course on equity. So we will continue our efforts to advocate and also to integrate population dynamics into climate adaptation strategies and climate policies. UNFPA is dedicated to ensuring that vulnerable populations, women, youth, and persons with disability are not only protected from the impacts of climate change and urban floods, but are also actively involved in shaping and affecting their lives. So thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from the rest of the presenters today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am Tanya Durrani, for your special remarks. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Sajid Amin Javed. Dr. Sajid is Deputy Executive Director and founding lead of Policy Solutions Lab at Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, Pakistan. Prior to joining SDPI, he was a senior research fellow and assistant professor at Department of Economics, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, PIDE. Dr. Sajid has been consulted to United Nations Economics and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, Asian Development Bank, United Nations Development Program, Department for International Development, Pakistan, United Nations Population Fund, Islamic Development Bank, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Overseas Development Institute, UK, United Nations Population Fund. Dr. Sajid will be joining us online and introducing us to D4D series.
Thank you, Ji. Assalamu alaikum, everyone there. I hope you can hear me. If there is no, I think I can't hear you, but maybe you can hear me. Can someone play my screen there, slides? या मुझे इजाजत दीजिएगा मैं यहाँ से slide share कर सकूँ as excellent. Thank you. सबसे पहले तो I will join हमारे जो दो पहले vote of thanks, note of thanks हुए हैं. मैं as a lead of this initiative Data for Development बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ FC कॉलेज ने हमारे साथ पार्टनर किया इस डायलॉग को ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए और ख़ासकर बहुत ज़्यादा जो मेहनत है मैं ज़रूर मेंशन करना चाहूँगा डॉक्टर वकास की जिन्होंने इसको लीड किया और तमाम जो लोग हैं तमाम हमारे जो ऑनरेबल स्पीकर्स हैं सबका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आई थिंक तानिया ने बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो हैं वो ऑलरेडी कह दी हैं सो आई जस्ट क्विकली जो ना रन थ्रू जो सेंट्रल मैसेज है कि कोई भी सक्सेसफुल डेवलपमेंट प्लानिंग जो है वो इफेक्टिव एंड एफिशिएंट जो डेटा अवेलेबिलिटी है उसके बगैर वो मुमकिन नहीं है हमारा इसका एक सेंट्रल मैसेज हम देना चाहेंगे इस पूरे इनिशिएटिव का तो वो ये है कि अगर हमें पाकिस्तान में एविडेंस बेस्ड प्लानिंग पे जाना है उसमें डेटा का बड़ा अहम रोल होगा और जब हम डेटा की बात करते हैं तो जो सूबों का रोल है वो सबसे अहम होगा क्योंकि बहुत सारी जो पॉलिसी है वो इस वक्त प्रोविंसेस के पास है हेल्थ पॉलिसी है एजुकेशन पॉलिसी है सोशल पॉलिसीज हैं सारी की सारी तो इस इनिशिएटिव का एक जो की कॉर्नर स्टोन है कि हमारा जो प्राइमरी फोकस है वो प्रोविंसेस है आपने देखा होगा बहुत सारी इस तरह के जो इनिशिएटिव्स हैं बहुत से इस तरह की जो डिस्कशंस हैं वो इस्लामाबाद से शुरू होती हैं और इस्लामाबाद ही में ख़त्म हो जाती हैं तो यूएनएफपी वाज वेरी काइंड कि जब हम बैठे और सोचा तो हमारा ये था कि हम जो डेटा फॉर डेवलपमेंट को जेन्युइन मानों में अगर हमने लेके जाना है तो सबसे ज़्यादा जो हमें ज़रूरत है वो सूबों में इस बात को लेके जाने की ज़रूरत है उसमें नेक्स्ट प्लीज चलिएगा हमारा जो बुनियादी मकसद है कि हम गवर्नमेंट की जो पब्लिक सेक्टर है खासकर उसकी कैपेसिटी डेवलपमेंट कर रहे हैं उसकी जो स्ट्रेंथन कर रहे हैं उसको बाय रिसोर्सेज by ability to use data, ability to produce data, and ability to share data. And then ability to integrate those messages coming from data analysis into the policy design. ये इस पूरे प्रोग्राम का इनिशिएटिव का एक बुनियादी जो ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि हम एविडेंस बेस्ड डेवलपमेंट प्लानिंग के लिए जो कैपेसिटीज हैं वो चाहे रिसोर्सेज की कैपेसिटीज हैं वो चाहे टेक्निकल कैपेसिटीज हैं और चाहे वो पॉलिसी कैपेसिटीज हैं प्लानिंग की कैपेसिटीज हैं उनको स्ट्रेंथन करें पाकिस्तान के सूबों में खासकर कि ताकि हम डेवलपमेंट प्लानिंग की तरफ जो है वो जा सकें नेक्स्ट प्लीज 4 इस सिलसिले में हमारे बुनियादी ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं सबसे पहला ऑब्जेक्टिव जो है वो बुनियादी तौर पे एक डेटा कल्चर को प्रमोट करना है और डेटा कल्चर हमारे यहाँ जब भी डेटा की बात होती है तो वो शायद डेटा प्रोडक्शन पे या डेटा कलेक्शन पे आकर रुक जाती है हमारा जो है डेटा कल्चर एक ब्रॉडर एक ओवर आर्चिंग एक लैंडस्केप है कि जहां आम आदमी से लेके पॉलिसी मेकर तक डेटा यूजर से लेके डेटा प्रोड्यूसर तक वो डेटा की अहमियत को समझे भी, उसकी लिटरेसी बुनियादी मालूमात भी रखता हो जो आम आदमी भी है, और उसको यूज करने के लिए, जिसको हम ये कहते हैं कि एक मेंटल मैट्रिक्स है जो पॉलिसी डिजाइन का, वो मेंटली इंटीग्रेटेड हो कि जी मुझे इस पे डेटा चाहिए, मुझे इस पे डेटा को इस्तेमाल करना है, और फाइनली कि डेटा की बात मानी जाए, जो डेटा कह रहा है उसके अकॉर्डिंगली उस पॉलिसी को डिजाइन किया जाए, उसको अपडेट किया जाए, मॉडिफाई किया जाए डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स में, जैसे आज हम क्लाइमेट चेंज, फ्लड्स और बात कर रहे हैं। तो दूसरा हमारा है, तो हमें लगा कि अगर हमें एक इकोसिस्टम को, इस डेटा कल्चर को प्रमोट करने के लिए हमें एक डेटा इकोसिस्टम को स्ट्रेंथन करना होगा। और डेटा इकोसिस्टम में आपके तमाम एक्टर्स हैं डेटा के। ब्यूरो ऑफ स्टैटिस्टिक्स प्रोविंशियल जो है, दे आर द बिगेस्ट एक्टर्स जिनको हमें स्ट्रेंथन करना है। फिर हमारी जो गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर्स हैं उनके अंदर एक अवेयरनेस, सेंसिटाइजेशन ऑन डेटा को करना। हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज जो हैं वो सबसे बड़ा एक प्लेयर है। किसी भी यूनिवर्सिटीज में दुनिया में कहा जाता है कि जो आइडियाज हैं वो 2-3 जगहों पर पैदा होते हैं, और उनमें सबसे जो अहम जगह है वो यूनिवर्सिटीज है। और आइडियाज डेटा इस्तेमाल भी करते हैं और डेटा जनरेट भी करते हैं। तो हमारा बुनियादी है कि इस पूरे इकोसिस्टम को डेटा यूजर्स के साथ इंटीग्रेट करते हुए एक इकोसिस्टम जो है वो किया जाए। जैसे मैंने कहा कि सबसे बड़ा इस इकोसिस्टम का होगा कि क्या डेटा अवेलेबल भी है कि नहीं है, और वो कितना ऑथेंटिक डेटा है। और जो डेटा की ऑथेंटिसिटी है दैट कम्स फ्रॉम कि आपका नेशनल स्टैटिस्टिकल सिस्टम जो है वो कितना स्ट्रेंथन्ड है। तो हमारा एक बहुत बड़ा जो पिलर है इसका, इस पूरे प्रोग्राम का, वो नेशनल स्टैटिस्टिकल सिस्टम्स को स्ट्रेंथन करना है। पाकिस्तान ब्यूरो ऑफ को हम ले रहे हैं ऑन बोर्ड। हम जो प्रोविंशियल ब्यूरोज ऑफ स्टैटिस्टिक्स हैं चारों सूबों के, हम उनके साथ काम कर रहे हैं। हम थोड़ी सी तफसील आपको बताएंगे कि हम उनके साथ क्या कर रहे हैं। तो अल्टीमेटली ये है कि हमारा जो इंटीग्रेशन है, जो एक कोलैबोरेशन है, जो नेशनल स्टैटिस्टिकल सिस्टम एट फेडरल एंड प्रोविंशियल लेवल्स, और जो मुतल्लिका डिपार्टमेंट हैं, खासकर PNDs जो कि हमारे लीडिंग डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं फॉर पॉलिसी प्लानिंग, उनकी कैपेसिटी को स्ट्रेंथन करना, उनके दरमियान इंटीग्रेशन को बेहतर करना। एंड फाइनली कि ऐसे क्रॉस कटिंग इश्यूज जिन पे बहुत ज्यादा बात नहीं होती, जहां पे बेसिक डेटा भी अवेलेबल है, उन क्रॉस कटिंग थीम्स के ऊपर जो है वो डेटा को प्रोड्यूस करना थ्रू जनरेटिंग रिसर्च स्टडीज, सर्वेज, पॉलिसी पेपर्स एंड पॉलिसी ब्रीफ्स। सो ये हमारे 4 बड़े पिलर हैं। नेक्स्ट चलिएगा प्लीज। हमारी अप्रोच जो है इस प्रोग्राम की बुनियादी जो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी है, दिस इज डिमांड ड्रिवन। ऐसा नहीं है कि हमने पहले से एजेंडा सेट किया हुआ कि अगले 3-4 साल 5 साल हम यही करेंगे और वी जस्ट फॉलो इट मैकेनिकली। हम ये तमाम पार्टनर्स जिनका हमने बताया है आपको, हम इनके पास जा रहे होते हैं वक्तन फवक्तन और उनसे पूछ रहे होते हैं कि ऐसी क्या चीज़ है जो आपकी कैपेसिटी को स्ट्रेंथन कर सकती है, जो आपकी ज़रूरत हो, और हम अपने प्रोग्राम को फिर अलाइंड करते हैं, टेलर मेड करते हैं उनकी ज़रूरियात के मुताबिक। रोबस्ट ओवरसाइट का हमारे मैकेनिज्म्स हैं कि जो प्रोग्राम है कितना सक्सेसफुली इम्प्लीमेंट हो रहा है, क्या उसके। एंड फाइनली स्ट्रॉन्ग पार्टनरशिप, जैसे कि ऑनरेबल रेक्टर ने ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स में भी कहा कि आप आज के पॉलिसी डायलॉग में भी 5 के करीब पार्टनर्स को देख रहे हैं। तो वी आर रियली रियली टेकिंग दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी कि ये जो एक प्लेटफॉर्म है ये एक रोबस्ट और स्ट्रॉन्ग पार्टनरशिप्स का भी इससे एक निकले हैं उससे पार्टनरशिप्स। नेक्स्ट प्लीज, आई एम जस्ट क्लोजिंग इन 2 to 3 minutes। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। नेक्स्ट चलिएगा, इसमें बात हो चुकी है, हमने एक एस्टेब्लिश हाई लेवल कमेटी की है, हम एक नेटवर्क ऑफ मेंटर्स को जनरेट किया है। अगेन ये हमारा एक ब्रीफ सा है कि हमारे 4 बड़े कंपोनेंट हैं, नीड असेसमेंट्स और कोऑर्डिनेशन मैकेनिज्म्स पे हम काम कर रहे हैं। हम इंटरेक्टिव लर्निंग्स के लिए वर्कशॉप्स, ट्रेनिंग्स, फॉर एग्जांपल वी आर ब्रिंगिंग इन पाकिस्तान फर्स्ट मोस्ट प्रोबेबली जो डेटा विजुअलाइजेशन एंड स्टोरी टेलिंग ट्रेनिंग इन अक्टूबर इंशाल्लाह। वी विल बी रीचिंग टू यू ऑल पार्टनर्स अपनी नॉमिनेशंस के लिए, पार्टिसिपेशंस के लिए। इसी तरह हम डेटा एनालिसिस और इंटरप्रिटेशंस के ऊपर इस साल ट्रेनिंग्स कर रहे हैं, और अगले साल हम नई ट्रेनिंग्स ला रहे होंगे। तो वी हैव दिस नीड असेसमेंट फ्रॉम द पार्टनर्स, और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली हम अपनी ट्रेनिंग्स को ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे होंगे। डेटा एंड नॉलेज प्रोडक्शन की जैसे मैंने बात की, एंड द नेटवर्क्स एंड द पार्टनरशिप्स। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। ये कुछ काम है जो इस फेज में अभी तक हमने किया है, वर्क जो हमारा अभी पीछे चलिएगा। सो जस्ट एक क्विक जो आपका एक ग्लांस डायलॉग जिसमें हम आज बैठे हैं, हम डेटा गवर्नेंस फ्रेमवर्क बना रहे हैं। दिस इज पाकिस्तान फर्स्ट डेटा गवर्नेंस
He said he lost his network.
So unfortunately, we lost connection. But thank you so much, Dr. Sajid, for introducing us to D4D and your remarks. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri. Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri is an Executive Director, SDPI, Member Global Committee, COP29, Board Member, NDMA. Dr. Suleri is the Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI. He is a leading expert on sustainable development, political economy of public policy, food security, and climate change. He has served in various national and regional policy-making forums and has represented Pakistan in several official and civil society delegations at global level. Dr. Suleri is currently a member of the International Advisory Committee of COP29, the Pakistan Climate Change Council, the Board of Directors of the National Disaster Risk Management Fund, the Board of Directors of Benazir Income National Disaster Risk Fund, the Board of the Board of Directors of Benazir Income Support Program, and the Board of Governor of National School of Public Policy. Dr. Suleri will be joining us online via Zoom. Thank you, Dr. Suleri.
Thank you. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think one important component of my introduction got missed, and I am an old Farmanite. And I really miss coming back to FC College from where I spent my formative year, and I really owe a lot to this prestigious institute for not only shaping up my thoughts, but also to be able to enable me to then perform my duties in whatever capacity I could do. Thank you, FCU, for this. And also thank you for joining hands and organizing this event in collaboration with STPI. Of course, when we were looking at an appropriate partner in Lahore, we couldn't think of any better partner than FC University. Now, the topic that you would be discussing, and I'm sure Sajid in his introduction has already talked about it at length. That is about data, that is about evidence-based decision making, and that is about how to remain part of solution and also challenge some of the existing policies or practices, not due to with the any biased lens, we like them or we don't like them, but with a very firm evidence and with very firm data. And this is what this project is all about. UNFPA as well as Ministry of Planning and Development, both of them I must appreciate their collaboration as well as their support to it. Ministry of Planning is a knowledge partner in it, and this whole project could not have been implemented and executed without the support from UNFPA. Today in Lahore, we are discussing climate change, its impacts in megacities, as well as urban flooding. And I think another important component of this picture, another important piece of jigsaw puzzle is plastic pollution. We know that many a times urban flooding, of course, it's this unprecedented rain that many cities they receive in a year. Now they have started receiving it in 3 to 4 days. For example, Beijing last year in July, it received a whole year of rain in 4 days, which was literally and practically impossible to manage. But even if the intensity of rain is not that much, it's the plastic bags and plastic pollution that very often, especially in developing countries and in Lahore and Karachi, it blocks the drainage system, and that also then leads to urban flooding. But we are living in very unprecedented times. We have already seen this year unprecedented rain in Sakhar. We saw about last week even in Lahore, and this trend will keep going. And those of you who would like to actually see why it's happening in most of your smartphones, when you check your weather app, there is one particular section here which is about average, and that tells you the deviation from the average weather pattern since 1970. So, for example, if I look at Islamabad weathers today, so my phone is telling me that it is 3 degrees Celsius higher than the average of last 52 years, whatever the temperature used to be on this particular day of August. And then if one goes back to Paris Declaration and try to see that in the even if leaving the best case scenario, the pragmatic case scenario, increase in 2 degrees centigrade pre-industrial era. So we find ourselves that we have already passed that threshold. Of course, in COP29 in Baku in November, there would be a lot of discussion on new climate initiative, climate actions. And there is a consensus on almost all school of thought who would be contributing there that we require stronger data and strong evidence to be able to come up with some sort of policy prescription. And that's where the initiatives like this data for development, they become extremely important. Likewise, Pakistan is among countries who would be revising their NDCs, nationally determined contributions. We will be presenting our NDC in 2025. And again, for that, we require very credible, strong data so that we can incorporate our growth trajectory vis-a-vis how climate change is affecting us, and the way forward, what sort of tangible actions we can do it. Another important aspect in this climate change, megacities and data, it is the disaster relief and disaster preparedness aspect. Now, sitting at the NDRMF board, when we have to take certain decisions, very often we realize that we could have been supported with the more intensive data to be able to take informed decision. Of course, the type of natural catastrophes and some of the human-made anthropogenic calamities that one is looking at, in the short term, it is difficult to avoid them, but at least with the help of data, one would be able to manage better, prepare better, and especially in megacities, which are bigger than the size of many European countries, we require these data-based intervention even more. And I look forward to not only today's discussion, but the continued collaboration with academia and with other knowledge partners, so that STPI, being a knowledge broker and being a bridge between academia, civil society, and public policy maker, can take your research and your data where it matters, and together we can do our collective effort to turn our cities, our societies, our nations resilient to climate change. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity, and I look forward to visit FC University in next possible event. Back to you, Sajid.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleri, for your special remarks. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Sana Bashir. Dr. Sana Bashir has a PhD in Environment and Climate Change. She joined Environment Protection and Climate Change Department, Government of Punjab in 2014, and currently is a Deputy Secretary, Technical Environment Protection Department, Punjab. So please give a warm welcome to Ma'am Sana Bashir.
Excuse me if I can just add, we have our chief guest sitting in the audience, Mr. Ahmed Iqbal, a member of Provincial Assembly. If the organizers in the hall can identify Mr. Ahmed Iqbal, he will be giving his special comments at the end of this session. Thank you very much, Ahmed Iqbal sir, for joining. He has joined since morning, and my apologies, Ahmed sir, we were because we are not physically present there, we couldn't give you welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and glad to be among young and seasoned scientists and public dignitaries. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. Despite our minimal contribution, which is less than 0.1%, we are facing significant challenges of climate, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. Also in Punjab, our mega cities are growing at an alarming and massive scale, which is putting immense pressure on infrastructure and resources. Urban flooding, which is also the topic of this seminar, is becoming an annual occurrence in most of our cities, which is displacing thousands of citizens and causing devastation to our communities and economy. Now, in terms of the efforts made by Punjab government in this regard, Punjab government, particularly Environment Protection Department, is making all efforts in terms of development projects, policy initiatives to address the urgency of this crisis and to act with collective resolve. Currently, Environment Protection Department is executing certain projects which are directly addressing climate mitigation and adaptation needs in terms of clean drinking water provisions, disaster management funds, flood risk assessment, endowment funds, land use and zoning strategies, master plans, water quality monitoring systems and their continuous monitoring station readings, air quality monitoring stations and monitoring mechanisms, vehicle inspection systems and certifications, eco-friendly vehicles, and waste management and other transport initiatives. On regulatory side, we are also formulating legislative framework that should adequately address the climate challenges. One such recent initiative is the very well-known Climate Resilient Punjab Vision and Action Plan, which was recently launched in stakeholder consultation under the chairmanship of minister and secretaries. This policy is directly aligned with the nationally determined contribution and other national and local initiatives to address the need of sustainable urban planning, green infrastructure, and climate resilient construction. However, these government contributions and government efforts cannot be realized without due support and contribution from academia and scientists. So I'm grateful again that I was invited here and I got the opportunity to share the development initiatives and policy measures that the government is taking for this crisis. Also, in the end, I would request academia and policy institutes, including the knowledge hubs like STPI and other institutions, to work together collectively in order to address the issue of climate change and urban flooding, in order to build a climate resilient Punjab, in which the societies and communities thrive in harmony with nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinha, for your special remarks and for enlightening us. Next, I would like to invite our chief guest, Mr. Irfan Ali Khan. Sir Irfan Ali Khan is a Director General, Provincial Disaster Management Authority, PDMA, Government of Punjab. He will be honoring us with a keynote address on climate change, mega cities, and urban floods.
Thank you very much, Honorable Rector, dear colleagues, and esteemed guests. Assalamu alaikum, and very good morning. First of all, I would like to thank PRC and FCCU for giving me this opportunity to talk about this very important, rather most relevant topic of these days, because currently Government of Punjab and PDMA, we are going through this, our monsoon, and we are grappling with this most important issue of urban flooding every other day. And so I'll be very briefly talking about the issue, its gravity and the intensity right now, and what are the challenges which are being, faced by the government and the concerned organizations and agencies, and finally the way forward. So if we talk about this urban flooding and climate change overall issue, no doubt the rapid urbanization of last 2 decades and coupled with our very bad land use planning, this is the actual core of the issue. And if I could share with you the statistics of current year, you all must know that 2022 was the latest year in which we have, witnessed the most devastating floods of Pakistan, in which almost more than $30 billion losses were determined. And if talking about the gravity of this urban flooding, I could share you the statistics that the total damages in terms of life losses and injuries, they were far less in case of Punjab what we have experienced this year because of these rains and urban flooding. How? Because there were numerous, cases of structural collapses in Punjab, because already we have, received this 30% above average normal rainfall for this year. So the effects and the gravity of the issue, that the total deaths of this year due to these heavy rains and urban flooding, they are more than those which Punjab experienced in case of 2022 floods in Rajanpur and DG Khan. So what are the challenges? I have already, very briefly explained you at the PDMA's level. We are, facing certain issues regarding urban flooding because the capacity of our, disposal, that is far less than what we are receiving right now. You must have witnessed this 360 mm rain in Lahore in few weeks back. But the good thing is that the government is, utilizing all the available resources and trying to do whatever it can do. in case of the preparedness for these monsoons, the Chief Minister of Punjab, she has visited PDMA, and when we were sharing our preparedness with her, the focus was on desilting. Then again, we have, in the month of June, we have started a new, multiple cycles of desilting. We have ensured the desilting of all major nalas of, starting from Nala Lai to, the other major nalas and the stormwater drains. And that was the reason that due to, if we talk about Lahore or the urban centers of Punjab, though there were, numerous deaths, but the deaths, the major cause was, structural collapses and sky lightning. We have in the month of April, we have, 26 deaths due to this sky lightning issue in South Punjab. But in terms of the performance of the organizations, especially VASAs, you all must have noticed that even after these, very heavy rains, especially in Lahore, the life was back to normal after 4 to 6 hours because of, untiring efforts of the VASAs and all the other agencies. And then the most important thing was that those desilting, processes in which the multiple cycles desilting was done, and the stormwater drains and all those, water carrying channels, they took that extra water, and ultimately public, was saved from major nuisances. Then what we are lacking right now at the provincial level or at the PDMA level, we do have our MHVRA, the multi-hazard vulnerability risk assessment, as far as the riverine floods are concerned. For all the eastern and western rivers, we have the data of 1.8 million household, in which we have, gathered that data on almost 292 parameters, and we know the vulnerable communities who can be, affected in the wake of any major river flows, as far as the riverine flooding is concerned. But for urban flooding, this risk assessment is, very much missing. And now we have already, requested provincial government for this much needed assessment, and we will be able in next, inshallah, 6 months about this risk assessment as far as urban flooding is concerned. Similarly, if we look at the early warning, and we do have this early warning system in place as far as the riverine flooding is concerned. But due to, lack of precision in our weather forecasting, and the capacity of various agencies which are responsible for weather forecasting, we do have these issues of precise and accurate weather projections and weather forecasting. Especially, I'll be talking about the hill torrents and hill torrent phenomena of DG Khan and Rajanpur, because in DG Khan and Rajanpur there are 13 hill torrents, and we have very limited response time in case of hill torrents, because whenever there is a rain on Koh Salman, that water has to discharge ultimately in River Indus in less than 24 hours. So in this very limited time span, and the government and the relevant departments and agencies, they need to respond to all those vulnerable communities in a very short span of time. But for that, the important thing is that you must have this precise and accurate weather projection and rainfall projections. So this is again an area where overall government of Punjab and even at national level, we lack this. But now, with the help of JICA and the World Bank, our PMD is getting new resources for in terms of these new weather radars, which are already, one has already been installed in Karachi and the other in Islamabad, and 6 more they are in the process of being installed. So with the installation of these new radars, hopefully we'll be having more accurate and precise weather projections, which will ultimately help us planning our urban flooding phenomena in the times to come. So in the end, I would just again state that provincial government and now they are seriously thinking about resolving this issue on permanent basis, because in case of riverine flooding, it is not certain that every year we receive this sort of a flooding issue, but urban flooding is now a phenomena which is very much certain that every year we are going to have these cloud bursting issue, and we are going to have these urban flooding issues. So now what the government is doing, that we are already undergoing a survey from all the 5 Vasas of Punjab and all the other local governments of the districts. We are getting the real-time data of their strengths and the gap analysis, and finally, what are the future developmental needs in terms of their overall disposal needs for this urban, flooding phenomena. And hopefully, with the help of this data, ultimately, government of Punjab will decide something more reliable and long-term solution for this issue. Again, if we look at Lahore, why Lahore is better performing, although Wasa Lahore is already doing a marvelous job, but these 6 underground water storages, which were built few years ago, they are also very helpful, and I hope 10 more are being established and built in coming years. So such type of interventions, rain harvesting and recharge wells, they are they can be other sources by which we can mitigate this urban flooding issue. So once again, thank you very much, PRC and FCCU. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Irfan. Now, I would like to invite our chief guest, respected MPA, Mr. Ahmed Iqbal, on stage. He has been elected as the chairperson of the Committee on Public Accounts of Provincial Assembly of Punjab. He will be providing us with the concluding remarks for the first session.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Adelton, Vice Chancellor of Rector of FC, good to see you. DG PDMA, CEO Urban Unit, Stania Durrani, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me at this event. I found out about it very late last night through Twitter that I'm invited to this event, and then Dr. Abid Suleri messaged me. So I won't take a lot of your time. I think this is a very relevant theme. It is something we are all struggling with. Not only just policymakers, but every citizen is facing the brunt of climate change. And as Dr. Abid Suleri said, we are living in unprecedented times. Indeed, we are. And the few things that I want to say, climate change is a reality. And the one thing that I would like to leave you with is that it is a young people issue. It is a young people's issue, because the younger you are, the more you're going to be affected by climate change throughout your life. And second, the most vulnerable are the poorest in our society in terms of climate change. We're talking in the context of mega cities. We only have one mega city in the province of Punjab, and that is Lahore. We've talked a lot about Lahore, and Lahore is the focus of all discussions. Lahore is the focus of all policy-making initiatives. Lahore is visible. If there is water on the streets in Lahore, it becomes a viral trend on social media. But we have a blind spot as well, and that blind spot is the 90% who do not live in Lahore. There's a large urban population, and there is a significant rural population that is rapidly urbanizing, not by migrating to cities, but just because our villages are now becoming more and more urban in their characteristics. And urban flooding is something that is out of sight when we, because I represent a rural constituency, so I know right now that there are villages that are drowned right now because of the rain that happened in the past few weeks. So we also need to think about, on a larger scale, we need to think about managing water. As DGPDMA said, I think this is a great initiative that we have piloted these recharging wells in Lahore. It is not a very expensive solution. And I think, especially coming from an area which is vulnerable to flooding, my constituency borders Jammu and Kashmir. So whenever it rains in the monsoon season, all of the water from the Jammu Valley or the Jammu Valley, Samba Katua, it enters into Pakistan, and there have been instances where that water has literally swept away tehsils after tehsils, right? So how do we save that water? How do we conserve that water? How do we, the Ravi is not going to flow anymore, right? And the city of Lahore, the settlements of Punjab that are that have been there from antiquity, they were, our forefathers, they settled around Ravi. And so Ravi is kind of our lifeline. And I'm telling you, from the point where Ravi enters into Pakistan, you could take the Cholistan Jeep Valley into Ravi now. It is dry, it is barren, it is like a desert. Something to think about. And also in terms of talking in urban context, I think generally there are also behavioral issues that we need to look at, and maybe government incentives can work well over there. For instance, there is a lot of, what do you call it, the runoff water. Like we don't have any permeable surface, and this directly plugs into or is related to the way we develop cities, right? The kind of materials we use. So this new trend of putting concrete everywhere, RCC everywhere, PCC everywhere, carpeted roads, that means that we're not allowing for permeability, especially in cities. If you go back to the traditional sort of development techniques, we've all seen those brick paved roads or pathways, jinko soling kehte hain. Soling is permeable, and if a soling has been put together in an honest manner, it outlives any concrete, any RCC, and any carpet road. I'm saying this from experience. I've seen solings that are there that were built in the 80s. Similarly, ye jo tough tile, again, this is a modern technique, same idea, but that gives you permeability. Households, and that's what I was referring to when I was talking about behavioral issues. We need to also incentivize households to do a better job at conserving water. saving water, maybe having green rooftops, maybe giving some, property tax rebate if you have a green rooftop and you're conserving water, because cities have done this all over the world successfully. They've transformed. It takes maybe 5, 6, 7 years to be able to, make something big out of such micro initiatives. Lastly, I want to say that, all of these discussions are very good, but we cannot address any of these problems if we keep thinking macro. If we keep thinking that, this big mega provincial agency or national agency is going to swoop in and, solve all our problems. These are fundamentally local, you have to think micro. You need to enroll communities, you need to enroll citizens. And again, at the expense of sounding like a broken record, Pakistan's system of government is broken. It will not deliver till we strengthen the basic tier of governance, that is the local governments. And any workaround that we think will substitute local governments, that is not built on an elected structure, will not work. So there is this talk about dividing Lahore into 4 districts. I think that would be catastrophic for the city. This city needs an integrated local government that looks after these challenges. You cannot, there's again this talk about, and Dr. Umar Masood is smiling because he's aware of it, of setting up a special police, that somehow that police is going to come in and tell us how to run cities, manage cities, enforce laws. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. We have to think micro, we have to enroll people into this. And that is all I have to say. I wish UNFPA, SDPI the best in taking this message forward. And obviously without data, none of this is possible. The last word on data, that all of this is also tied to SDGs. And every year, Pakistan is slipping in its ranking towards achieving the SDGs. 2 years ago, I used to go to conferences and scare people by telling them that we are at 125th out of 165. This year, we are 136 out of 165. And if we continue at this pace, there are 5 years left. I think there will be no more spots left for us to, sort of fill after a couple of years. So data is key, because what is not measured will never get done. Even UN agencies do not have basic data on access to sanitation. And at best, they are estimates or guesstimates, as we like to call them over here. So I hope that this D4D initiative is at least able to put that data out. And I think that if that data is, I don't know if even if the government agencies or the government or the policymakers don't do anything about it, equip the people with that data. And at least there will be demand for action. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed Iqbal. So due to some other commitments, Mr. Irfan Ali has to leave early. So I would like to invite Dr. Jonathan Addleton to present him the shield.
Dr. Sana Bashir.
Okay, so our this session comes to an end, and up next we have our technical session. So I would like to invite Dr. Faisal Abbas to moderate the session.
Thank you very much. Without wasting a minute, we will move to the next session, which is technical session. We have 4 panelists for this session. Dr. Rabia Chaudhry, Dr. Abdul Rahman Khan, Mr. Umar Masood, Dr. Umar Masood basically, and Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. I like to invite them to please come to their respective chairs. Ma'am, आ जाइए please. Dr. Rabia Chaudhry is assistant professor at the FC College University and at the Center for Public Policy and Governance. And the thing that we share in common is that she has done her PhD from Center for Development Research, where I also did my PhD. That's great, and I'll be brief because we missed a little bit of time. So I'll introduce you briefly, and then we will move straight ahead into the serious business of discussing the issue that we have at hand. We have with us our second panelist, Dr. Muhammad Iqbal Saab, who is professor of statistics with more than 3 decades of experience of teaching and research. He is professor of statistics at the Department of Statistics and also dean at the department in Peshawar University, and he holds his PhD from Japan. We have Dr. Umar Masood Saab. He is a seasoned bureaucrat. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence. He's CEO Urban Unit. He has had his PhD from MIT USA, and we are very, very grateful, sir, for your presence. And last but not the least, we had our 4th speaker and panelist, Dr. Abdur Rahman Saab. Sir, thank you very much. He's all the way from Bhutan's Quetta. He's pro-rector in Balochistan University of Information Technology, Engineering and Management Sciences. He is Fulbrighter, and he completed 2 masters and also a PhD. And he has experience of working with national international organizations, academia, and also in the management of the academics as well. So thank you so much for all of the panelists who are here. The topic that we're discussing is very important. My name is Faisal Abbas. I'm professor of economics at the Department of Economics at NUST Islamabad, and I'm also director of Center of Excellence on Population and Wellbeing Studies, which is also funded by UNFPA. And we are one of the partners who is organizing this event. So before wasting any further, I would directly move towards Umar Masood Saab, sir. If you start with the 3 words that we had: climate change, mega cities, and urban floods. You are the most relevant one to start with this debate. And then also love to listen the importance of data for development. So how data within the climatic changes in urban lives help us or hinder us to move further in floods, before floods and after floods.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. I've been on this circuit talking about climate change and urban flooding and cities for quite some time. So you can say I'm a past master at handling these type of questions. So number one, I think we should all realize, whether globally or whether we are talking about Pakistan, that majority of our population is going to be living in cities. And if cities are going to be affected by any type of climate change, a very, very large concentrated population is going to be affected. And because our cities are unplanned and they are not always magnets of growth and development, you have a lot of what you call a phenomenon that we do not recognize it officially in Pakistan, which is called urban poverty. So climate change is going to affect massively cities, and it is going to affect massively a very large vulnerable population in cities. So there is no denying the fact that we should be talking more about it. But I think we have come to the stage that we've been talking a lot about it, but we have not been acting, sufficiently. I was in the USA in 2022 in one of these conferences at the bank, and I just happened to be a speaker. So during the coffee break, everybody came to me and sort of sympathized with me with the floods which happened in Pakistan. I think everybody. And I think as a Pakistani citizen, I was ill prepared to respond to that type of sympathy being extended to me. I said, yes, it was awful. But the follow-up question was a question which I still find hard to answer. And the follow-up question was, what are you doing about it? And I think even after 2 years and sitting over here, if you were to ask me straightforward, what are you doing about it? I think I would still, struggle a lot. So coming back to your question, I would start from the last part of your question, which is basically the one which is written right behind this poster, which is data for development. I would, there are many myths about data for development in Pakistan. The first myth is that data does not exist. I think data exists, and troves of data exist. The problem is that the data is siloed. It's compartmentalized. Nobody has a full picture of where the data is. But as you experience this in research or in public policy making, these treasure troves of data emerge. And then finally you realize that we do not have a data problem. We have a data coordination problem. We have a data sharing problem. We don't have frameworks for sharing data. And then there is, I think, culturally speaking, we are shy when we deal with data. There is a reluctance in Pakistanis that if I were to show data and if it were to turn wrong or incorrect, I would embarrass myself. I think you learn by sharing data and by actually getting a feedback on what you have done, whether it is a climate model or whether it is a statistical regression or whether certain assumptions in your model may be incorrect. Whenever the feedback is given, it is given in a positive way. But unfortunately, I think what is really holding us back is this issue of coordination. It's a lack of a sharing framework. And then there is, this diffidence of trying to share data publicly. I mean, if we look at a plethora of, presentations which are being made on climate change, we usually tend to skip very quickly on the data part of the presentation because we are just afraid to be confronted with some type of a criticism. So data for development is the foundation on which climate action based in cities is going to, evolve, number one. Number two, I think Ahmed Iqbal mentioned it more succinctly than I did. It cannot be a macro problem. This is not a provincial problem. This is not a national problem. This is a local problem. Until you have local actors galvanized to act at the ground level with issues of climate change till you bring them on this stage where I'm sitting. Really, in my place, the mayor of Lahore or the administrator of Lahore should have been sitting, or the managing director of Wasa for Lahore should have been sitting, not me. I'm not the person who is responsible for draining out all the flooding points of Lahore, on a daily basis. But I think we have failed to localize the issue of climate change sufficiently in our cities. And if you have time, perhaps later on in this, discussion, I would give you an example of Karachi. The urban unit was involved in with the UNDP in developing the climate action plan for Karachi. Karachi happens to be one of the members of a C40 alliance. This is an alliance of 40 cities which are looking at climate action strategies globally. And when they engaged the urban unit to do this task, I myself was very skeptical that this is never going to see the light of the day. Time was 6 months. I thought there would be no data, there would be no cooperation, and we would end up, doing a futile exercise. But I was pleasantly surprised, and I must acknowledge the mayor of Karachi over here, who was actually interested in looking at what climate change impact would be as far as the city would be concerned, looking into the future, and then trying to identify projects which could mitigate urban flooding. So it is that type of a thinking, a much more sort of a structured and a long-term thinking that we need to evolve at the city level if we are to address climate change more effectively. Otherwise, what you are right now seeing is macro policy. There are a lot of policy, documents floating about, but none of the policy documents give you a roadmap of how to do or how to tackle these things at the city level. I think I've spoken enough. I'll take a break and let other participants.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I just directly go to Dr. Rabia Chaudhary and want to hear from you on the same thing, but from a more policy, academic, and governance perspective of how these three words plus data come into picture together to make us more towards development side rather than the way we are looking at it now.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I think because I think we have some students over here as well. So what we need to do is I've been here for an hour or so, but what we haven't done is drawn a distinction between what urban flood is and what the other flood is. So I think that's a very important starting point, which is that it is a pluvial flood. It has nothing to do with a larger body of water. It is flooding that is caused by rainfall, or it is independent of seas, rivers, oceans. And that sort of is absolutely important because in our case, especially in Lahore's case, it is because of heavy rainfall, right? So और उसके अंदर then the problem added to that is that it's rainfall, but then are we blaming the rainfall? No, we're not. It gets compounded then. It gets compounded by what you're exactly saying, by the governance structures, and the governance structures have certain real problems with them. You might have an older drainage system. Where is the water going? The kind of concretization that we are going towards. Last year, and this is where I'm going to be very careful with the data because the monsoons are still going on. So I haven't schlepped myself off to the Met department this year. I did last year once the monsoons were over. We had 10 days which qualified as urban flooding, right? And so then that sort of raises the question, which is that, what causes that? And the first question that, your gut reaction is, have the monsoons increased? Because, we tend to think in terms of larger climate change. We think in terms of the weather is changing patterns. And this is very interesting. And this is where the absolute importance of data and technical input comes in. Because what I was informed by the Met department was that you cannot look at the monsoons as a phenomena. You need to look at monsoons as a season. So monsoons don't happen as per one event. You have to look at the season. And if you're looking at the season, they said typically it starts on the 4th of July and ends somewhere at the end of September. So now if you pose a question, and again, this is particularly why data is important. You say, have the monsoons increased? They say, no, the average rainfall hasn't increased. What has increased is the patterns have changed. And because, so just to give you an example, what happened last year and why this is absolutely important to be prepared for the year after is that you got rains in July, you had rain in September, August were technically drought conditions in Lahore, which we don't know because, you know, we say बारिश अब normal नहीं होती है, अब तो कोई normal बारिश ही नहीं होती, but that is because the rain that was supposed to happen over 3 months happened in July and then happened in August. And just to sort of wrap our heads around that, Lahore can accommodate 40 millimeters of water per day. So, you know, if 40 millimeters or less rain, you're good, you're golden, you're fine, there's nothing problem. Now, here is some statistics just to help understand. 26th of June last year, we had 161.8 millimeters of rain in Lahore. That is 4 times as much as rain Lahore that Lahore can take. Then 2 days respectively, you know, July mein at some point in time, you had 94 and 60 respectively. Pehle din ka pani khatam nahi hua, you have rain the next day. 23rd of July last year, and this is very important, 206 milliliters of rain in a city that can take 40 milliliters only. And this year we've had 300 and something anyway, right? So, you know, you're working with real concerns. And that sort of says कि, you know, अगर आपकी 206 या अब तो 360 millimeter rainfall हो गई है, where is that water supposed to go? And this is where, you know, the question that you asked, where, you know, the developmental question comes in. You are building a city which is sort of what I would call sort of a liberal economics, or, you know, a self-preservation, economic liberalism wala model आप follow कर रहे हैं. You building growth machine, yes, you're and plus for a particular class, right? आप गाड़ी वाले के लिए city develop कर रहे हैं, so you're building roads, and the more roads you will, and I think this is where we come back to the question that was raised earlier, which is that's all concrete. So the water that was supposed to find some, so all of us who grew up in Lahore, and again this would be interesting because these younger kids won't know. If you remember Main Boulevard had Bougainvillea in the center, which was larger than this road itself, because that is where all the water went. It was depressed also. Now that water doesn't go over there, right? So, you know, because that is all concrete, because the road has become 4 lanes as well. So trees are being cut in order to accommodate. These are the sort of the normal things, right? By normal, I mean things that we already know. Trees are being cut, you know, but what that does is it creates a heat sink. So your city has become a heat sink. The more the city becomes a heat sink, the more pressure you create, the more low pressure you create, you know, that creates a problem. Then our cities, especially Lahore, and this is a Lahore-centric problem that we have, which is, so 2017 ka census says that Lahore had 11 million people. My estimate as per the Bureau of Statistics conversation, and Umar Saab would be better, say it's somewhere between 16 and 17 million people. As per informal data that I collected from the counter-terrorism department, and they were doing this purely from a terrorism perspective, they said that 30 se 25,000 banda moves to Lahore every month. So just grasp your head around it. 25 to 30 people, as per the counter, where are they going? They're being accommodated. So you see, and in order to accommodate, you're building houses, kache, pakke, jaise bhi. As per an MIT study, you have, so between 2010 and 2017, you have lost more green cover than you lost between 1990 and 2010. So, you know, 2 decades, in 7 years, you lost more cover than that. And these are the things we have data for, right? This is something that I can sort of create a sort of, you know, urgency by giving you data. There are loads of things you don't have data for. For example, you don't have data for the informal sector, us tarah se. So, you know, you can just sort of have some sort of a understanding. You have 300,000 to 400,000 informal sectors in Lahore, workers in Lahore. So, agar ek din ki jo hai, wo barish ho gayi hai, so, you know, 3 to 4 lakh banda lost their livelihood for that particular day. No money came into their house. The chali wala didn't set up the chali wala, the golgappa wala didn't set the golgappa wala, the rudi wala didn't go out, you know, all of that stuff that you have. And then, you know, women always get lost in all these data points, which is that, you know, you do, and this is more sensitive, right? So you see, we have, reached a point that schooling, colleges, this and that, the other is sort of becoming more important. But you have that kind of flooding. They're the ones who immediately get affected. Where are you going to get your rickshaw from? Where are you going to get the bus from? And speaking of women, on the days when, and I live in Model Town, I get flooded in, I have to call up and say, listen, I can't leave the house. So my problem is my car stops somewhere. What am I going to do? If I were, it just becomes more vulnerable for women in these scenarios. So you see, and here, this is what we're going on about, that, climate change is a global phenomena, but it is felt very locally. In fact, the term that we started using is hyper locally, because my problem and the causes and the effects of climate change that I feel are going to be very different from somebody sitting in the US or somebody sitting in Germany would be. For me, it's urban flooding is the problem for me. For me, it is the smog which is the problem that I have to face, right? So, it needs to be addressed at the local government level, at the hyper local government level as well. And secondly, we have a tendency, academia in general has a tendency of looking at climate change as a scientific formula. If we do this and this 0.1 emissions, so, that will go to 1 degree. We need to start looking at it as a governance issue as well, and that's the interdisciplinarity of it that comes in, that, it has implications beyond the science of it all. It has implications beyond the economics of it all. We're not going, even if we stop at this very moment, we stop the carbon emissions and suddenly we say, okay, this is where we stop, and we're not getting warmer. Even then, we're living in a world that we're not prepared for. Even this is not going back. We're not going back to the 80s. This is here to stay, which we are feeling at the moment. So, this is a local governance issue. This is for and just to sort of give you an idea, with the CPPG, we were shared the climate policy. So, that was the first draft of the government. And one of the it's really interesting that, that's what we are talking about over here. The recommendations were, but where are the women in this? But where are the children in this? Where is the data? As Omar Saab said, why are we not sharing the data with the people? It exists, but it's in the very nature of climate data. That's, here I will play the devil's advocate, that it's not just Pakistan. It's in the nature of data that climate related data, that it gets collected in different, so, migration data will be different, climate data will be different, flooding data would be different. So that's where, my job comes in, that's what I'm there for. But yes, enough data is being collected, at least so far. And the more you create, the more you can say, I can go up to Umar Saab the next year and say, Gee, this doesn't exist. And maybe the next year when they are, doing something about it, they can collect. So but it's a governance issue as well. With that, the governance issue that can be sorted via the data collection and the.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We always say when floods come, they don't know they are going to rural areas or urban areas. We are distinguishing them between rural and urban areas. Floods definitely impact three very important things: infrastructure, livelihood, and human beings. And when infrastructure and livelihoods are impacted, human beings are impacted. So anything that happens to roads, to buildings, to agriculture, it indirectly impacting the human being. So I'll go back to Abdul Rahman Khan Saab to have his word of wisdom on how he see, based on his experiences, the floods that he saw during his lifetime, the government and the policy impact of urban floods or otherwise. Your comments on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here, Dr. Vikas, and I'm very pleased to be here. And a younger brother wants to learn from the older brother, Punjab. So in Balochistan, our issues may be a little bit different. But overall, the thematic discussion remains on these grounds as we have been discussing here. We also, Balochistan, normally we say 43% and very scattered population. And probably, as the DG was saying, that Lahore is the only mega city here. And then if this is the only mega city, what about Faisalabad, Gujranwala, Sialkot? Then Quetta is not even a city then. So for us, Quetta is the mega city. And that is we are having issues with the same phenomenon as it happens in Lahore or any mega city, and take the examples of Karachi and some other cities also. First of all, I agree with what my respected colleague said that climate change, I don't know the reality, of course, it is real, but it has become a buzzword. We always say climate change, and now you go in any discussion, if you don't have anything to discuss, you'll start discussing the weather, and then from the weather, you will directly come to climate change. But where are the actions? I totally agree with you, sir. We talk a lot about climate change, but if we look at the government level, and my apologies to my donor colleagues also, we talk about gender, we talk about change in the society, we talk about behavioral change communication. Where are we bringing them in our planning? And then once it is in the planning, if it is, where is the implementation? So we have to agree with this phenomenon that yes, it is a very important one, but how proactive we are to that. The tradition has been that normally here we are more reactive than being a proactive. कुछ होता है तो then हम ओ हो जी अब तो वो हो गया, how should we take care of that and क्या करें? And then if something is happening, we all talk about climate change and it's happening around the world and Pakistan will also suffer. But what have we done? PDMA, NDMA has been working since 2007, 2008. How practical they have been. They have made plans, and how did they respond to 2022? A very recent catastrophe that we had across the country. And what have we been doing? So my whole understanding that we have to look into very seriously. And to me, like you said about urbanization, definitely that's one of the issues that we are facing, particularly in Balochistan. We are, because the Quetta, as I mentioned, is a mega city. So everybody from the 36 districts would like to come to Quetta. And they would like to have their children there educated. They would like to have their health issues taken care of. They would like to have a better business opportunity they can find in Quetta. So yeah, unless we bring this again, the whole thing into our entire planning, that where can we give them better education, at least at the district level, there are districts. You won't believe that in the entire districts, there is only one high school in the entire district. So what would they do? Their children, they will go to the mega cities, they will come. So we have to look into the urbanization, a very serious threat. And second, the behavioral change communication, as I mentioned, that the environmental issues, people are not aware. Plastic is still there. The waste collection, we don't have any proper management. Now we are in Quetta, they are privatizing it. And in the first 2 weeks, they just showed some pictures that the streets are now clean. So I hope they are, but we are still facing this plastic thing, and the urban flooding is not only the rain, but the overall drainage system is playing a very negative role in that. And we don't have a proper solid waste management. And if we talk about urbanization and the environmental issues, the two issues that I'm saying, we don't have proper planning for that. And because of the planning, as you mentioned about the data, partially I agree with your suggestion, that we have data sometimes, but they are in isolation. However, the authenticity of that data is yet to be questioned, because I give you one example about education. The literacy rate given by the World Bank is different. The literacy rate by UNICEF is in their communication is different, and the literacy rate for Balochistan in government books is different. So where should we go, and where should our planning be? What should our planning be based at? So that is one of the issues that we have, the reliability and the authenticity, and to have it an integrated platform. And I don't know, maybe Lahore is a little bit developed, but I think in Balochistan, these are the biggest issues that we face. And therefore, our planning is flawed, our implementation is flawed, unfortunately. So data collection and then having it kind of an integrated data set which is available to all the departments. A collective approach has to be given, which normally now the departments are working in silos, and the whole nation and particularly the people of Balochistan are facing this issue.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Thank you so much. And we'll go to Dr. Muhammad Iqbal Saab, who is the data guru, I would say, because he has his PhD in statistics and also running the population center as director. So, sir, over to you.
First of all, I would like thanks to Rector FCCU, Dr. Waqas and his team, Dr. Faisal from NUST, Dr. Sajid Amin, SDPA, Ms. Tania Durani, UNFPA, for their support to arrange such a wonderful event on important topic, climate changes, mega cities, and urban floods. I would like to mention here the issue of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, what we are facing as a citizen or like that. Actually, Peshawar में अगर आप तारीख में जाए ना तो Peshawar was the हैं तो इवन बर्ड्स जो है ना वो भी उनके लिए भी पेशावर में रहने की सिर्फ एक जगह रह गई है एंड दैट इज दो जगह दैट इज वन इज द पेशावर यूनिवर्सिटी अनदर इज द कोर कमांडर हाउस तो तो इसमें इशू क्या है कि प्लांटेशन जो है हमने जितनी भी कंट्रीज को विजिट किया है ना इट इज डिपेंड ऑन द ह्यूमन कि वो अपने फ्यूचर को कैसे डेवलप करता है वो अपने फ्यूचर के लिए कैसे प्लानिंग करता है तो जिन लोगों ने प्लानिंग की है उन्होंने वहां पर प्लांटेशन किए उनके फॉरेस्ट हैं उनकी प्लांटेशन है अगर जापान आप जाएं तो उन्होंने अपने लिए क्लाइमेट बनाया है कोरिया जाएं मतलब जिनसे टर्की को जाएं तो इन सिटीज में एज ए ह्यूमन प्लानिंग हुई है अनफॉर्चुनेटली वी आर डिस्कसिंग द डेटा yes if we have a data we will analyze the data and we will conclude the problem academia होगा academia will do it किसने academia को इन्वॉल्व किया है मेरे पास जितनी भी रिसर्च हैं इन पेशावर यूनिवर्सिटी वो अलमारियों की जीनत बनी हुई है दे आर पुटिंग इन द अलमारीज उधर क्या है वहां पे लोग आते हैं सिर्फ स्टूडेंट अपनी फर्दर रिसर्च के लिए दे आर यूजिंग दीज रिसर्च नो गवर्नमेंट पर्सन इज कमिंग और वो देखे कि मैं प्लानिंग कर रहा हूं फ्लड पे और उसके लिए डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट में जियोग्राफी वालों ने कौन सी रिसर्च की है कि उससे मैं इन जो जो लोग हैं वो उससे फायदा ले सके अब आपको मिसाल देता हूं व्हाट एग्जांपल इज देयर बिफोर बीआरटी पेशावर रोड में कोई फ्लड नहीं था बिफोर बीआरटी पेशावर की जो रोड था वो ग्रीन लश ग्रीन था विदाउट प्लानिंग स्टार्ट हो गई एक चीज नाउ आफ्टर रेन स्टार्ट आप आफ्टर 10 मिनट्स फीट्स 3 फीट्स वहां पे पानी खड़ा होगा देयर इज नो प्लानिंग फिर आप वो ट्रीज भी खत्म हो गई एनक्रोचमेंट इतनी हो गई है अब आप मुझे बताएं इसमें आज यहां पर बैठे हुए हम लोग नॉलेजेबल लोग जो स्टेज पे हैं जो आप लोग सुन रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट भी है प्लानिंग में आप यूनिवर्सिटी को एकेडेमिया को इन्वॉल्व करें मेरे खैबर पुख्तनख्वा में स्वात में फॉरेस्ट ऑलमोस्ट खत्म हो रहा है स्वात की ब्यूटी जो थी दैट इज ओनली ऑन फॉरेस्ट तो जब आप फॉरेस्ट को खत्म करेंगे तो वो ब्यूटी भी गई वहां क्लाइमेट चेंज भी आया और उसकी वजह से फ्लड भी आ गए। आगे फ्लड के लिए इरिगेशन का जो एक मैकेनिज्म है कि हम बिजली भी प्रोड्यूस करें, इरिगेशन पर्पस के लिए भी यूज करें, वो भी डॉक्यूमेंटेड बहुत कुछ है, लेकिन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन नहीं है। आई एम आल्सो द इफेक्टीज ऑफ तुरबेला डैम। तुरबेला डैम में जिन लोगों ने सेक्रीफाइस किया, तो आज उन्होंने दो तरह के बेनिफिट्स इस नेशन को दिए। वो स्टोरेज ऑफ वाटर फॉर एग्रीकल्चर एंड इलेक्ट्रिसिटी। अब अगर आप इस प्रोजेक्ट को हटा लें तो आप देख लें कि फिर क्या पड़ रह जाता है। तो मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है, इस फोरम से आई रिक्वेस्ट टू द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी मेकर्स कि वो इन्वॉल्व करें एकेडेमिया को, कि जो डाटा कलेक्शन होती है दैट डाटा शुड बी एनालाइज थ्रू एकेडेमिया। उनकी जो रिसर्च होती है उस रिसर्च को यूटिलाइज करें और उससे बेनिफिट लें गवर्नमेंट साइड पे। इन चीजों का आपस में लेजान नहीं है, तो मेरी रिक्वेस्ट ये है कि इनका आपस में लेजान बनाकर और इनको इन तमाम जो डेवलपमेंट हो रही है उसमें इंक्लूड करें। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you, sir. बहुत शुक्रिया. We will immediately go to our audience if they have very brief, quick question. Just introduce yourself and to the point, brief question if you want to ask.
I'm Sylvia Machado from Department of Environmental Sciences, FC College. And just a quick comment, my cupboard is full of data and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to send it. So like Dr. Umar was saying that we have a data management problem, not a data problem. What can be, or how do you envision implementing a cross-functional data governance structure? This means that who can be the custodian? What roles will they have? Which departments have to respond to this storage, or where to store it? Who will manage it? Who can access to it for when it's required? So that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, this is a really great question. It's, talking about it is one thing, actually doing something about it is harder, but it's not as hard, because globally, worldwide, you just need to get onto your computer or your laptop and go to the US Census Bureau. Open it up and you will see how, how the data is structured and what is accessible and what is not accessible. So it's not that you have to, it's not like sending a rocket to the moon sort of a thing. It's more of an institutional resistance. Obviously, you need to have one or few centralized agencies which are looking at data, because one thing which is very important about data is standardization and the quality of data. So urban unit cannot run its own database and say, this is the urban unit's database, or X or planning and development starts running its own, data archives, because then that same thing would actually occur, which is happening with the donors, that they actually come up with actually different numbers. But, let me share with you my own personal experience. Not that I'm being critical of the organization. We also behave in the same way. But, just to tell you that when you do not have a legal framework for sharing data, when you don't have a legal structure for sharing data, oddities or awkward moments occur. So we, the urban unit, asked the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, which had the census data for 2023 at the circle and the block level of cities. Just imagine, it's digitized census data at circle level in cities, and it is digitized census data at Moza levels outside cities in rural areas. The raw data is available with them. They may not have structured it formally, but it is available with them. So we wrote a letter, one first reminder, second reminder. So on the third letter, they said, that we would like you to come over and give a presentation of exactly what you are going to do with this data. So, this type of an attitude sort of, runs against the fact that data is actually freely available. It's like, suggesting that either I'm asking for an ultra sensitive or ultra secret data, which it was not. We are also aware of what data to ask for and what data not to ask for. But this additional layer of bureaucracy or discretionary bureaucracy which actually comes in, that what are you we had actually written that why we need the data. We needed it for our property tax estimation. The purpose was, but they wanted a presentation of exactly how that data is going to be used. Now, they also have a point. When you are using data, why I say that there has to be a legal framework to it, because anonymity of data in some cases is also very important. You don't want to start sharing private information or identifying information in data. So all these sort of conventions or practices have not been outlined properly in Pakistan, generally speaking. And because when we talk about agencies which have data, most of the time these happen to be government agencies, and government agencies being bureaucracies are rule bound. They would always like to have a rule to which they can refer to, that I can share it with the urban unit, I can share it with the FC university. So if there is no rule to it, then you fall into a sort of a gray area, and then it becomes a very personality driven sort of an interaction. If the director or the director general happens to be, much more forward looking, he would say, okay, I'll take the responsibility. Here's the data set. You can use it. If he happens to be run of the mill conventional bureaucrat like the one you are watching right now, I would say that you would need to apply for this. I will send it for permission, and that by that time your funding would run out. You would have moved on to the next question, and that is one of the reasons. I can tell you one more thing. That is one of the reasons that good quality research is not coming out of this country. Because good quality research is now globally a collaborative effort. When they say that in Pakistan you simply cannot get the data for it, if you've got a good collaboration, your idea may be sound, your research may be very practical and very applied. But if the data is hard to come by, it's out. A professor at Brown University, and this is like 7 months ago, we shared with him the infrastructure data of the Lahore water supply system. So the urban unit has the water supply mapped, the length of pipes, and also the sewerage data. It's all digitized. And we just did not realize the value of it. He told us that it's like gold, that if you have this, data, but I am not in a position to share it with Brown University. They approached me and they said that we can do an agreement. And I said, let me think about it, whether I need a government permission to share data for it. And if it is an agreement under our rules of business, that will go to the law department of the province. They would never have seen such a document, and the whole thing would sort of fall apart. So we need to do a lot of homework on data sharing, and that homework really should start from the federal government, which should evolve a legal framework for data sharing, make it more open, more accessible, and then it should be replicated at the provincial government level. And you can actually see a sea change of it. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you so much. Any brief, quick question? Ji, ma'am.
Teachers usually talk louder. Okay. I'm Ramsha Salim from Lahore College for Women University. My subject is economics, and I usually do research in sustainable trade. It was catchy to come to this seminar when I listened that it is by STPI, organized by STPI. I have a range of questions and comments, but I will end up with a couple of ones. Yeah, I'll be brief. Look at the topic. It is data for development. It is a plethora of topic. must involve interdisciplinary actions, interdisciplinary research. It can involve sociology, economics, geography, environmental specialists, or whoever can come in the arena. The problem is really the data sharing. Recently, I did a paper on urban agglomeration. For that purpose, data was not available. We went to urban unit and requested someone. That guy replied with an apology that you have to come again and again to the section. We'll be giving you the data. Although we could complete the paper, but it was really very hard exercise to do that. Academicians' involvement, as Professor Saab said, must be the core of the research. And once the academician is involved, data must be disseminated to the relevant university also. So the other researchers can take the data from that researcher also. It must be on the dashboard of that. This is only the comment and suggestion which I can give to the players. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rabia, if you want to say something.
No, I completely agree with you. You're absolutely 100% correct. But here, look, there's certain blame that we need to sort of take as well. So, for example, at one point in time, I learned that there was absolutely no point in talking to journalists or in the public media because I don't speak the same language, right? So, you know, everybody would say, oh, Pakistan has had the second consecutive democratic government. And I would say, but no, there's a difference between liberal and illiberal democracy, right? So, you know, that's my fault. There is a second element, which is that if you visit the CPPG website, we issue a quarterly, twice a year, thrice a year, which we widely circulate as well. It goes to the government departments. I'm sure Umar Saab ko bhi aata hoga. It goes to embassies. It goes to think tanks. It has a very wide outreach, right? Never have we got a follow-up question on that. And this has been happening for 10, 15 years now. Nobody has ever said, listen, you wrote this. This made perfect sense. Let's talk about this. It has never happened. In fact, if anything, if Dr. Say Shafkat had been here, he would say, you know, they come to my office, they ask me what to do, and then that is the last conversation I ever have on that conversation. That's it. Because, and they're political realities as well. You know, playing the devil's advocate, there are political realities as well. But yes, I mean, your point is well taken. You're absolutely right. Things have to be open source. Their academia is at fault as well. Papers jo hai, wo are not open access. You have to pay for them. You have to pay to publish. You know, there's all of that issues as well. But yeah, you know, we're doing whatever tiny little thing that we can. But you're right also over there regarding there is a lot of data that does exist in public domain as well. So, you know, Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, Punjab Bureau of Statistics, they publish their reports. They publish their yearly reports. They publish the LFS, the household data. It's all available online. Ye ek aur baat hai ki if you ask them a query and they do have a box on their website of the query as well, sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't respond. So, you know, then you have to make a phone call. But yes, that data does exist online as well. Yes, no, but we do have a micro level problem. I mean, till such point, we have a micro level. I mean, I think Umar Saab would be better able to explain the micro.
So, you know, I also want micro level data because I'm dealing with cities. I would like to have micro level data. I just cannot operate at a macro level data. So a population of a district really does not matter to me as much as the population, say, of the neighborhood surrounding FC College, because any city level investment is going to affect the neighborhood, the quality of life, as far as this thing is concerned, this neighborhood is concerned. So I would like to really have the demographics of this population, how many young people are there, how many old folks are there, and everything else. The data is there. But the problem is because we do not have any authority or a legal framework which allows us to share the micro level data, what the urban unit's standard practice is, and I'm going actually public with it at the moment. I should not be even saying it, that we then request the researcher come over, look at the data, do whatever research you want to, and then you go back. Then it's not that I've handed you a flash drive or something to that effect. Or, you know, and it has happened many, many times that when the research is so pursuing, they have actually deployed like two assistants who have looked at our portals, noted down the data or copied the data, and gone ahead. And there are reasons for it. When it comes to micro level spatial data, it's most of the time it's harmless. Most of the time, 99.99% of the time it would be harmless, unless you are looking at a strategic facility of a military importance or something to that effect. But way back in 2011 or 2012, a law came about spatial data, which actually states that Survey of Pakistan has to clear every data set. You just cannot create a data set of your own of spatial data and just place it on the web if it has not been cleared by Survey of Pakistan. So these type of added layers, which perhaps most of the folks in this room may not be aware of, but I as a civil servant am aware of, we also have to stay through this sort of, thicket of additional rules and regulation. And we have tried to do as best as we can in sharing data. And one of the reasons that the urban unit advocates partnerships, whether it is with FC University or SERP or LUMS, or even with, say, MIT abroad, is that, that gives that entire effort a validation which is stronger. It will give you higher level of access. Otherwise, because I live in Pakistan and you live in Pakistan, data sharing is basically a lot of relationship building. You really have to know the people, then you have to actually, sometimes we exchange data. I will give some data to the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics or make a map for them. They will in exchange actually give me, data. So there is a barter system also going on. I'll not go divulge all the details, but even for us as a government agency, it's sometimes hard to get data. You might be doing your research in your individual capacity, but it is not as easy. I admit to that. I wish we could have a better system of actually, doing that, but unfortunately, we are struggling on that front. I've given you the solution. It's a bit of hard work, but I think it can work.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Any quick last question? Be brief, please.
My question is to Dr. Umar. Mr. Umar Saab. Umar Saab, what is this with the bureaucracy, this depth of reflexivity that we see in planning? I mean, data is a very important component of planning, but planning is more important. I mean, even in this context, we know that there are natural air corridors, that there are natural water corridors, and we don't need much of our data to plan for in our urban planning. I mean, it's common sense, isn't it? We have to align our policies with the natural ecosystem, right? That is more sustainable. At best, data can tell us the probability of the consequences, right? It cannot predict the causes. For that, we need the larger framework of planning. So in short, my question is, what is this dearth of reflexivity in our planning that we see in recent decades that have been growing, and honestly, it's just stupid.
Just quickly see the second question and then we go ahead. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Faisal Rasool, Agriculture Department, Lahore. I recently completed my PhD in climate change adaptation. So, although my point of view slightly, turns around Lahore city, because I strongly believe that agriculture land should be conserved, because agriculture land means you have to produce more, food and other food items for the population. Although Chief Minister Punjab has recently constituted a committee to restrict agriculture land into conversion into residential and commercial use. And second, my point of view is that rainfall harvesting has been experienced in Potoha region. Like Arid Agriculture University has, made a framework for utilizing that rainfall water for the harvesting of crops. And follow that, Directorate of Soil Conservation, Department of Agriculture, Rawalpindi has made mini dams by utilizing this concept of rainwater harvesting. Thank you so much.
So it's about data governance, management, and then rainwater harvesting.
Okay, let me answer the first question. I'll try to, you're being called stupid, not every day. So let me give him some time to actually, allow me some time. One thing is an issue of implementation. One thing is planning, the other is implementation. So if you had sort of followed it up with an example, that would have perhaps made me understand the question more. But if you see a natural water corridor or an air corridor, which was part of the ecosystem being infringed upon by any type of development, most of the time it is just that we have poor enforcement of our existing rules and regulations. There are actually environment laws. There is actually a floodplain law for Punjab, which disallows any type of construction in and around a floodplain, because we have, very dangerously speaking, very moving floodplains. Our floodplains change, very easily, because these are not like rock solid, type of floodplains. So, just to actually give you an example, the legislative framework exists. In fact, even when projects are evolved, there is a mandatory environmental impact assessment. Now, how good that environmental impact assessment is, that's another question. For example, I was part of an inquiry committee to look at the haphazard construction which has occurred in the town of Murray. You are all aware of it. I think almost all of you have actually visited Murray throughout the ages, and it looks a very different place. It's not a rustic little town that used to be 40, 50 years ago. When we looked at what the requirement was, they needed at least 15 no objection certificates from different departments to allow construction of any infrastructure or any type of building. They were getting those 15 no objection certificates, and all type of odd buildings, irregular buildings were being actually constructed. So most of the time, it is not a reflection of poor planning, but it is more a reflection of poor implementation or a lack of enforcement, which is being reflected on the ground. And obviously, collectively, people may ascribe it to poor planning. It may not be always the case. And I say it may not be always the case because sometimes we also do poor planning. And there might be many political economy reasons for it, number one. I admit to that also. And in some cases, what happens is that the difference between option A and option B is so marginal that you might tend to go for the wrong option. So when we are making planning decisions, honestly speaking, they are not as clear cut as day and night. Sometimes you might say that I would go for the road alignment on this side because this road alignment is going to save me about 100, 200 million rupees. And that perhaps the financial aspect matters more at that time than the environmental aspect. Now in that, there is no malice, there is no bad intention. It's just how your decision framework is actually structured. So perhaps if we could do a better job at that. Coming to the second question, rainwater harvesting. Yes, I was not aware that the Arid University is doing work on rainwater harvesting. So that's information for me. By the way, a project on rainwater harvesting is actually coming up in Murray. So if you are interested in looking at that, that is for smaller households, poorer households. pretty expensive projects, but we are doing it because we just want that poor households get access to more ample supply of water than they have right now in Murray. So that is the only comment that I have about that. You wanted to
I wanted to add to that. In addition to that, there is a problem with the policy paradigm of this country as well. A lot of policy, and as my esteemed colleague here said, it's buzzwords, right? And it's not just buzzwords. There's a lot of development / policy planning is donor driven, which means that nobody's taking ownership. So, क्लाइमेट चेंज पॉलिसी बना दी अब उस क्लाइमेट चेंज पॉलिसी का पहला ड्राफ्ट अगर आप देख लें तो कि उमर साहब was never called for that and he would have said कि add all of this to it. I was never called. I was called for comments on it, to which we gave comments and said कि ये नहीं कि ये कर देंगे ये हो जाएगा, that kind of thing. So a lot of policy making in this country, a lot of especially when in the field of developmental areas जिनको हम कहते हैं, are donor driven. There are are two aspects to that. One, there is a hegemonic intent behind them as well, right? You can't deny that. Secondly, we never get to take ownership of them. So it's just like, this much money is supposed to come in because it is aid connected with your aid, make this law, make this policy within this period of time. And then we do stuff like that. And just to give you an example, last year I finished, it's not related to climate change, but last year I did a project on juvenile justice. And turns out कि आपका जो 2008 का law था on juvenile justice, वो क्योंकि अगले दिन जो है वो पैसे आने थे तो रात में बना था तो juvenile wasn't defined in the juvenile justice ordinance, which was in place till now because you still haven't been able to make rules for the previous one, right? So there is a problem. There's a ad hoc, knee-jerk. In fact, I would like to quote Faisal's paper over here, which he's written on migration, or at least co-written, which is, you have this many migrants in this country. You don't have a migration policy. So, why not? So you see, there's a problem with policy paradigm as well.
Liberty to ask. I'm coming to you. So I'll basically want to bring one more important, rather less discussed issue, or maybe we missed it, the issue of urban slums, because we talk a lot about infrastructure, governance, and all these things. But then as cities are growing, Pakistan is becoming one of the largest urbanizing country in South Asia. And we have this urban slums problem as well, which is definitely a thing that we are interested in. So urban unit and then our colleagues from Quetta and Balochistan.
Honestly, you've really touched a very, very raw nerve with the urban unit. We feel very strongly. Now the irony. International classifications जो होती हैं, the conventional land use classification when you are doing any type of master planning or planning in a city or an urban area does not contain a classification for an urban slum. Imagine there are maps which even do not show the urban slum. Satellite imagery se aapko wo built up, with satellite imagery you might be able to notice the built up area of the urban slum, but when it comes to the classification map, there is no classification of urban slum. So even if you are not identified as an urban slum or as an informal urban settlement, how can you expect any policy to be actually coming out of it? I think, that's one of the stark realities of informality in urban areas, that even the planning paradigm skirts it over. Pull out the Lahore master plan of 2001, one which is, publicly available or is with NESPAC, for example. See the map and say, have you earmarked the urban slums at that time in 2000, 2001? And they were urban slums. They have not been earmarked.
Definition ही नहीं है.
There's no definition.
How to define a thing?
No.
How will you help it out?
No.
Sir, Abdur Rahman sir.
Before commenting on your second question, the first question from that corner and Dr. Saiba about the data. Last week, we had this data for development in Quetta. Although the topic was a little bit different, we were discussing youth employment in that discussion. And I think this is a cross-cutting kind of a theme which applies to every topic. And so we had the Minister Planning with us and the dignitaries from the government departments, like the secretaries of various departments. And I think we have already started in Balochistan that we should work on data compilation, whatever is available, in which whatever shape it is, if it is with the development partners, or is it with the government departments, be it irrigation, education, health, PHE, or whatever. So we have offered the Butums, our university has offered to provide the technical services. And we have agreed that we should have, under the chairmanship of the planning minister, we should have a dashboard. And first, we are going to prescribe some SOPs, how to collect and what to bring in there. The Planning and Development Department will be the custodian. However, they will place it in the Bureau of Statistics, the Provincial Bureau of Statistics. So that's what the plan is. And we have offered our services that will help you with the developing a dashboard, and which is available to every researcher also. We involved ourselves because we wanted the same, with the same passion, that the academicians should be involved in these data collection, compilation, and if we can, the scrutinization of the data in the sense of its checking its reliability and, authenticity. So that was, we have started this, and hopefully something will come up in the next 6 months, a year or so. It's not an easy task. I agree. लोगों के अपनी जेब में हर एक का डेटा होता है. They don't want to share with the people. वो ownership इस तरह के करते हैं कि जी ये मेरा है, and the मेरा is not coming हमारा. So I don't know when are we going to change that mindset, that bring it from I to we, then we'll have that. Urban slums ki baat, you said that, again, I'll give you an example of Quetta. We are flooded by the refugees also from Afghanistan. We are flooded, as I already mentioned, that we don't have the facilities in the rural areas. So everybody wants to bring their child to Quetta. They want to bring their people for the treatment to Quetta. Kyunki sab kuch markaz hi Quetta mein hai, although we are the biggest province. Unfortunately, we don't have. And then the slums thing is that people who are coming or migrating from the rural areas of Balochistan and coming to Quetta, in Quetta now, a foot of land is, in some areas, it's about 200,000 rupees a foot of land, square foot. So means nobody can afford except if you are a millionaire in the. So then you will move to the suburbs, and then the slums becomes a reality. However, totally agreed with that. We don't have a planning for the slums, and slums become actually the problem for the entire urban structures that you want to develop and you can't. Mud houses are there. A drainage system is not existing there. So छोटे से 2-4 कतरे भी, जैसे हमारा बड़ा आप, तो फिर भी you have a canal and a river, and you are a little bit used to water. In Balochistan, we are not even used to water. तो हमारे यहाँ जो थोड़ा सा मसला बन जाता है, it becomes a flood. So lack of planning is there, lack of recognition of that population migrating from the rural to the vicinity of the urban areas. It has become a big challenge for us.
Thank you so much, sir.
I want to mention here that what is actually our priority. If our priority is to facilitate the common man, then we can do something. But I think the priority is not a common man. Another thing, I suggest that there is coordination between the policymaker, the researcher, and the data producer, जो data produce करता है. इन एक coordination government को बनाना चाहिए, और हर किसी को answerable होना चाहिए कि मुझे क्यों डेटा तक रसाई नहीं है एज ए रिसर्चर, क्योंकि मेरे स्टूडेंट का जो फीड है ना, जो उसकी खुराक है, दैट इज डेटा. सो हाउ वी विल गिव देम अ डेटा. Okay, for example, I will write many letters to the department and then they will provide the data. वो क्यों एक रिसर्चर जाते हैं और उसको वो डेटा क्यों नहीं देते और उसके साथ उसको ऑब्जेक्टिव्स दे दें कि ये मेरे ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हैं, इन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को अचीव करके आप मेरे लिए भी काम करो। क्यों? उसने तो रिसर्च करनी है। रिसर्च में होता क्या है कि डेटा एंड देन योर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स, हाउ यू विल अचीव दीज ऑब्जेक्टिव्स थ्रू मेथडोलॉजी। तो मेथडोलॉजी को रिसर्चर समझता है, एकेडमिशियन समझता है, तो ये इनके दरमियान एक कोऑर्डिनेशन हो। थैंक यू जी।
End up a wonderful panel here, but before we end, I would say 3-4 simple points that we get from this discussion. One is that, like human beings, cities and their lives exist in layers, and these layers must be explored based on our understanding, on data that we had, and the way life is organized in these places. So urban poverty is the most important element that brought in our discussion. Governance and policy paradigms are the second that we have to have in our mind. Secondly, coordination and co-creation of the data and its existence and sharing is third thing that we have to have in our mind as well. Collaboration in terms of government, public policy, media, and academia is another important element that we have to face. And unless we think that the data that we are producing will bring change for ourselves, we cannot do. So if I think that मैं सरकार हूं और मैं कोई data produce करके किसी का भला करूंगा, तो वो किसी का भला नहीं हो रहा. I am also the citizen of Pakistan, and so if I'm doing something good for somebody, I'm doing good for myself. So that's one thing that we always have to have in our mind. Thank you very much for our panelists to be here, our audience to have some wonderful question, and I go back to Ms. Fajabat for further proceedings.
Now, moving forward, I would like to welcome Dr. Sikandar Hayat. Dr. Sikandar Hayat is a distinguished professor of history and public policy and dean, Faculty of Social Sciences at Forman Christian College. In 2014 to 2017, he was chair of the history department. Earlier in 2006 to 2012, he was directing staff at the National Management College and Dean, National Institute of Public Policy at National School of Public Policy, Lahore. Now, Dr. Sikandar Hayat will be providing the closing remarks online.
Thank you so much. Let me begin by, am I audible, please? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me begin by thanking all of you for addressing the important and pressing issues of climate change, megacities, and urban floods in Pakistan. These challenges are becoming increasingly urgent, and it is critical that we do something about them. I was planning to speak, but more as a layman, of course. You have already heard the experts on the subject, particularly in this technical session. And then again, I guess, given the paucity of the time, maybe we have overshot our time scale for this seminar. I'll confine myself only to the thanks part of it. I'll forego the concluding remarks. I mean, almost 2 pages that I thought of my input on the subject, and would in view of the limited time would confine myself to thanking those who participated and made this a worthwhile effort. Besides, I believe, given the engaging interactive session, especially this technical session that we had, and with the additional remarks of the moderator, I don't think there's much that I could say by way of conclusion. In fact, in my own personal experience, this is one of those rare seminars which is indeed a self-concluding seminar. I'll only hope that this seminar will add more nuance to our understanding of climate change and urban floods in megacities. Our hope is that it will catalyze solutions for this imminent, devastating threat. It's a responsibility that we should not take lightly. Finally, I would like to thank UNFPA and the STPI for their generous support in organizing this seminar. I would like to render a special thanks to our esteemed partners in organizing this event, the PRC at the University of Peshawar and the Center for Excellence on Population and Well-being at NUST. I would also like to thank most sincerely our esteemed speakers, able panelists, Irfan Ali Khan, Director General PDMA, Guest of Honor Ahmad Iqbal Sahib, and of course, Dr. Jonathan Edelton, our Rector, and the organizers, primarily the organizers of this seminar, indeed for bringing us together to dwell upon, discuss, and analyze perhaps an existential threat to our people's lives, livelihoods, properties, infrastructure, indeed the prosperity of the country, the climate change. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sikandar. Now, I would like to invite our respected rector, Dr. Jonathan Adelton, on stage to distribute seals and certificates.
Ms. Tanya Durrani, she's not here. Dr. Abdul Rahman Khan. Dr. Rabia Chaudhary. Dr. Muhammad Iqbal Chaudhary. Dr. Faisal Abbas. Dr. Muhammad Irfan Malik. We also have shields for Ms. Tanya Durrani. If she's not here. Okay, thank you. That's all. Okay, now I would like to request Dr. Waqas Ali to say a few words. Thank you.
I'm not going to make a speech here. I was just going to invite all of you. We're going to have a group picture in front of the building. So I would request all honorable guests to join us there so we can have the picture. And thank you very much, all of you, for joining us, and especially the panelists and the speakers. Thank you.